So what happens before you release your book onto Amazon is just as, if not way more important than what you do after the book goes live. So as promised, this is going to be my pre-launch case study for a book that I'm going to be publishing onto my account. So we're going to be using the Fractions Worksheet Generator as the demo software for creating this book, but everything inside this can be applied to any type of book that you are creating. So if you've ever purchased any type of shitty course and the courses are filled with tons and tons and tons and tons of information, what you actually need to do is strip back most of that information and focus on the fundamentals, and that's what we're going to be covering in this video. So we're going to answer a ton of questions, a ton of concerns that you have, and set you onto a path pre-launch that's going to give your book the most success possible. So let's get into this. Step 1, we're going to be talking about niche research. Step 2, we're going to be talking about sharpening the axe, as we call it here. Step 3, we're going to be going into content creation. Step 4, we're going to take a look at our launch plan. And step 5, we're going to plan our book series and touch upon the advertising campaigns that we're going to be using for this book. Now, all of this can be applied, like I say, to any book that you are creating. So just very quickly to summarize this here, you're going to be seeing my actual thought process, which is something that I don't think I've ever really showcased on my channel. We're going to go through the thought process. We'll take a look at all the free tools that we're going to be using. We're going to take a look at everything in action so that we can set our books up for the best chance possible. So as you can see in brackets here, we're going to go into a ton of information in every single section, but we're going to make this quick. We're going to make this actionable, and you're going to absolutely love this. So of course, we're going to be heading over to Amazon to do our niche research. Now, in every section of this video, I'm going to be doing this in a step-by-step manner, using demonstrations and showing you how you can do this for your publications as well. So step 1 is that we are going to start somewhere. We have to find our niche. We have to start somewhere. You can start anywhere you want on Amazon. You don't need to have any kind of influence from any kind of tool whatsoever to do this. Straightforward. Do not overcomplicate this step here. So let's head over to Amazon and get this step out of the way, because it is one of the easiest steps, picking the niche that you're going to enter into. So I do recommend that you do have some interest in any niche that you're going to publish books in. But what you can do is just come up to the search bar here and just start typing the broadest niche that you're going to be interested in. So it could be absolutely anything, whether you're going to be doing coloring books, activity books, whether you can think of something more specific within that. So for example, like a landscape coloring book or a Halloween activity book, or whatever it is, you can start wherever you want. Just get that decision in your head to start looking for something. So as per the example of the software that we're using in this video, we're going to start with early education. So logically, what would you type in to find some early education books? You can just go for something like math workbooks, and then just go from there. So this is incredibly simple stuff. You really don't need to overcomplicate this. Now, what you're going to do when you get presented with the search results on the first page, you're just going to start opening tabs for any type of niche that you find on Amazon. So like I say, we don't need to overcomplicate this. What we need to do now is to kind of just find the niches within this niche and start opening them up in new tabs. So for example, I can see here that we have workbooks for grades 3 and 4. I can see that we have addition and subtraction workbooks. I'm just going to open up all of these different niches into different tabs. Then what we're going to do from there is to start determining whether these niches have got buyer traffic going to them. So let's just keep opening these up here. We have time tests, we have kindergarten. Again, it doesn't matter whether these are very specific niches or broad niches, just start opening them up into different tabs, and then we're going to go from there. So once you've exhausted the first page of Amazon, you could go on to the second page, but what I like to do from here is just to go into specific books and then just scroll down. You've probably seen me do this a million times before, but then you can go onto the frequently bought section and the more items to explore section here and just start doing the same thing here. So we have algebra, we can open that up here. We have fractions and decimals and percentages, fractions again here. Again, just opening all these up. Math refreshers for adults, we're going to open up all these different niches, then we're going to dive into them and do a little bit more research from there. So just to use a different example here, we can just type in puzzle books if we have that vague interest in creating any type of puzzle book. Just going to scroll down, look to see what's on the front page. We're going to open up everything that we can into separate tabs, and then we're going to go from there. So we're going to open up the variety puzzles. We're going to open up Sudoku. We're going to open up large print. We're going to open up brain teasers. We're going to open up cryptograms. We're going to open up pretty much everything. And like I say, we're going to do our research from there. We just have to start somewhere and then just start picking off these niches. Really, really simple stuff. You don't need to get bogged down at this stage. You just have to start doing something. So that was step one. It's the easiest step. You just start collecting ideas. No matter where you are, you can go onto the bestsellers list. You can do anything you want. Do it all on Amazon. Don't use any sort of tool or software. Do it all on Amazon. Write down your ideas. Get those tabs open. And then step number two is what gets a little bit more important here, is that we need to establish that we have buyer traffic going to any of these niches that we've just opened up. So you're going to be using free tools to establish if there is traffic going to these niches. So what we're going to be doing for every single tab that we've just opened is to check the BSRs across the first page for every single one of these niches. So the way that we do this, the quickest way that you can check the BSRs is by downloading DS Amazon Quick View, which is going to present the BSRs underneath the thumbnails of the books, as opposed to having to go into the actual listing itself to check the BSR. Now, we're going to move on to the next step here, which is going to be about proportionate returns, which is super important when you're doing a niche research. But for now, we just want to make sure that the broad niche has got traffic going to it, buyer traffic going to it. And we establish buyer traffic by checking how consistently low the BSRs are across the first page for the niches. So let's use our fractions book as the examples here. What I would like to see for this type of niche, and I'm going to explain why I'm picking these perimeters in just a second, is I want to see books that are ranked under 200,000 consistently on the first page. Okay, I'm going to explain that number in just a second, and that's going to help you with so many things, advertising, etc., and budgeting. It's going to help you with so many things, creating your series. Let's talk about that in just a second. But at the moment, under 200,000, let's just go through 51,000, 7,000, 48,000, 27,000. I'm not going to insult your intelligence here by going through absolutely everything on the first page. BSRs are consistently under 200,000. Now, from doing this for a very long time, we're going to make the assumption that anything under 200,000 has consistently got sales going to it. It doesn't mean that it has bazillions of sales going to it every single day. It just means the niche in general is sought after and has sales going to it. Now, just to give you an example on the other side of the coin, and again, we're going to take note of these BSRs because it's going to be relevant to our budget and our niche. It's very important. So let's just take a look at adult coloring books. Now, when you scroll through and you see the adult coloring books, you must know, you have to think logically, how much competition does such a broad niche have? Now, if we wait for the BSRs to present themselves on screen here, what we want to happen, since the niche is more competitive, if the niche is more competitive, we're going to probably have to put more money into the production of the product and also into the advertising cost. Okay, so we're going to talk about proportionate returns in just a second, but for this niche, since it's more competitive and we have to create a higher quality book, which means probably more money, it means that we want to make sure that the BSRs are super low, so anything under 10,000 consistently across the front page. Okay, so this is obvious. Now, I'm not telling people to get into adult coloring books because they are very competitive. If you look to see how low the BSRs are across the front page, pretty much a lot of them are under 20,000, under 10,000, which means there's a ton of traffic going to them, but it also means to compete with it is going to be extremely hard. And of course, we can use the results here to determine that there is, of course, going to be a lot of competition to this type of book. So if I'm going to create a book in this niche, I'm going to have to pair this with the potential return, which means that there has to be a ton of buyer traffic going to it. So if you look at these books here, the potential niche cap here for adult coloring books is really low with its BSR. So you can make a shit ton of money, but it's just going to be much harder to do that. And you have to put much more time and effort and money into these type of books. Okay, let's move on to step number 3, which is something nobody ever talks about, but I personally think this is the most important factor when it comes to increasing your chances of making sales on Amazon, not getting frustrated, budgeting your advertising costs, and actually getting proportionate returns on your time and money. I'm going to explain that using the two extreme examples of coloring books and fraction books now, so that you can actually budget the amount that you spend and increase your chance of making sales. So let's use the fractions and the coloring books as examples here, and this is going to clear a ton of things up for you. So what this is going to help us do is to determine how much money we should be spending on advertising campaigns for these books, how many books we should be creating, and what our chances are of making sales in these niches. Okay, so it's all going to make sense as we go through this. Now, what I want you to do when you're doing a niche research is to take note of the BSRs. So, for example, what we've seen, anything under 200,000 has got some sales going to it. Let's just say between 5 and 10 sales a day. Let's just say between 1 and 10 sales a day. Now, here's what a lot of people do. What a lot of people do is that they take any niche. Let's say they take the fractions, the word search, whatever it is, they take any niche. They don't take this into consideration and they pump hundreds and sometimes thousands of dollars into one book every single month. Now, proportionately, is the return on that investment going to be worth it when the BSRs are sitting at around an average of 200,000 on the front page? The answer is no. So, what do we determine if we want to get into this niche? We can determine from this that we can, one, spend less money on our ads because there is less competition, and two, we can determine that we can actually create more books in this niche. So we have to create more books. We have to. Okay, it's factual. We're not going to make a full-time income or a significant income from buying software and then making one book. We have to create more. But also, that opportunity has to present itself as well. We'll talk about that in just a second. Now, let's move on and take adult coloring books, for example. So, when you look at the BSRs for this, you want to see how competitive the niche is. You can use your brain and the search results. Search results are incredibly high, which means the competition is incredibly high. Now, you can look at this and say to yourself, how much money am I going to have to spend to create the book? How much money am I going to have to spend to advertise the book as well? And you can base that off of the BSRs and you can base that off of the search results as well. So looking at something like adult coloring books, while there might be a lot of traffic going to it, you're going to have to spend more on advertising for this. Now, for the coloring books that I produce, they are all in competitive niches, which mean that I'm going to up my advertising budget to around $200 for the first month. So you see what I mean here about making educated decisions. Now, making informed decisions. Now, for example, if you look at a niche that has less competition, but also has slightly less traffic going to it, what you can establish here is that you can spend less money on the advertising campaigns to get your book ranked. So, for example, if we're creating a fraction workbook, what we're going to be able to do is to budget to around $50 per month for the first month instead. And what that's going to allow us to do is to also create more books. So we might have created a coloring book and spent $250 a month for the first month on trying to release that in a super competitive niche. Whereas we can go into these smaller, not so glamorous niches and create more books, but still stick within that overall budget. Okay. So is it better for someone to create, let's say, 5 of these books and then put $250 across the total of those 5 books? Or is it better to create one adult coloring book and spend $250 for that one book? Now, I can tell you from experience, the risk is much higher when it comes to doing these type of competitive books. The reward is there also if you get it right, but if you're looking at increasing your chance of making sales, this is the better option, is to produce more books that cost less to invest in. So if you didn't watch my last video where I spoke about the different niches that you can get into, you can go back and watch that. I highly recommend you do that after watching this video. And that is step 3, super important. Now, step 4, with that in mind, you can't just create a ton of books just because Chris says it's good to create more books. You have to establish if that's even possible within the niche that you're in. So we're going to use 2 examples here. We'll take a look at word searches and we'll take a look at our fractions books as well. So if we're doing word searches, for example, which a lot of people are, what a lot of people are doing wrong, and I've seen this so many times, is that they'll create 3 or 4 word searches, they'll run a ton of advertising campaigns to them, and then they'll quit because they're not making any money. Now, this leads me back to my last video where I was talking about if you're buying software to speed up content creation. If you are buying software, if you've made that investment, you have to create more books. Now, can you create a series of word searches that are all niche different? Of course you can. If you look at the amount of word searches that you can create, for example, you have spring, you have large print, you have autumn, winter, you have all the different seasons, you have Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day, all these different niches that you can get into and hedge your bets and spread your advertising budget across. You can get into tons of these niches and you can increase your chances of making sales with every single book that you publish. And the same goes for the fractions that we're going to be getting into as well. Can we create a series from this type of software alone? Like, yes, we can, because with early education books, what can you do? You can target all kinds of different grades. So, for example, if we're doing fractions workbooks, we can see that we can target grade 4, grade 3, grade 5, grade 2, etc., etc. Okay. And the other thing with early education books is that you can pair these with other types of niches as well. So, for example, what this person here is doing is that this is probably a big publishing company, is it? It's a proper publishing company, but they're pairing fractions with decimals, and these people are pairing fractions with decimals, multiplication, long division, geometry, and you can mix and match where it makes sense to do so. A ton of different niches here, okay? So the other thing with fractions specifically, and what I'm going to look into, is of course you can target people that are looking for visual fractions. And then of course with this as well, with early education books, you have the opportunity to create these kind of timed tests. So if you remember, I created this book back in 2022 and we made this as a timed test, and it stood out when we got ranked on the first page. I was one of the only people making this kind of addition and subtraction time test worksheet, and we sold like well over 1,000 copies of this book before it died off. But my point is that's just another angle that you can take with these type of books, which allows us to create more of those books. So is the niche research phase making sense here, where we're just starting somewhere on Amazon? We don't need any type of tool whatsoever to get started. Find those niches, open them up, delve into those niches and establish what type of buyer traffic is going to them. Once you've established the type of buyer traffic, you can then plan out, you can map out what you're going to need to spend on advertising, and then you're going to work out what type of potential there is for actually creating a series of books as well. So again, everything comes back to creating more books, but actually increasing your chances of making sales with those books whilst not spending too much money. That's the important part here. So that's going to move us on to the next phase. And this, again, is applicable for any type of book that you are working on. We're going to be sharpening the axe, as I've called it here. But basically, we're going to make sure that we're going to give our audience exactly what they want. And all of this adds up to increasing our chances of making sales. This is factual. You have to do this. Obviously, you have to do this before the book goes live. So step one of this section is that we have to plan our content. No matter what type of book you create, you want to plan your content. And in step number 2, we need to figure out how to improve our book versus the competition. So again, super important that we do this, and we're going to be doing this by reading reviews and acting upon them. I'm going to show you both of these sections now, but making this relevant to the fraction worksheet, what we need to do specifically for early education books is to make sure that we have our table of contents created first. Then we have to check with the Common Core. Then we have to create our book around that content. Okay, so super important, especially if you're doing early education. It is the most important step. You have to get this right. So here's what we're going to do to make sure that we target the audience correctly. Now, again, like I say, to really emphasize this, it is super important. More so pertains to this example to the early education niche. But before we do that, here's a massive tip that has made me a shit ton of money over the years. This is something that I've hardly ever spoken about. But if you find a book in the niche that you're entering into, and that book is making sales, but it doesn't have particularly good reviews, it doesn't have a particularly good book cover, it doesn't have a particularly good listing aesthetic. Look at this grammar, it is literally incorrect grammar. And this book is making sales or has made a significant amount of sales, this is a absolute winner of a sign to publish better books in this niche. When we publish a better book, we're going to shit all over this type of book here and take those sales. Okay, super important, a little bit brutal, but this is the nature of the business, right? The way that you can establish whether a book has had the sales over the course of its lifetime is you can download Helium 10's Chrome extension. It's a historic one. It's free. You can come here and check out the all-time BSRs. Now, what you want to see is that the return on this book has been pretty good, given that it's, for example, at the moment, the BSR doesn't look particularly good at 700,000, which is a little bit misleading, because if you look at this for the time and money that was invested into it, is it worth it since the time that it was actually produced back in 2022? You look at the BSRs, sometimes we get down as low as 100,000 on our BSRs, which means over the course of this year or the last year and a half, it's probably made over 1,000 sales. So a bad book making sales is a great sign that you need to get in there and take the traffic from them, take the sales from them. Because really, if they're not offering a particularly good product and you can come in, then it's a win-win. You're going to make the sales, you're going to please more customers, etc., etc. So regarding how to make sure that you actually please those customers where these people have not done so, what you're going to be doing is, first and foremost, is you're going to take their table of contents. So you can go into other people's books and take a look at the table of contents, which is going to help you structure your book. I would probably do it for a book that is selling better, that has better reviews than this one. But you can come onto the read samples. You're going to go down here. If it lets me, you just scroll down, you take the table of contents, and then you start seeing if you can create these type of pages yourself. So I'm going to screenshot that. Then I'm going to go into the app and see if I can create these type of pages. So second to that, what you need to be doing is checking out the reviews for these books, the negative reviews, to see what they've done bad. Okay, so we have 2 bad reviews for the book here that have written, so we can act upon this information. And you would do this for any niche that you're entering into, is to find out what could be better and then make your book better. So let's see what this person has done wrong. And as you can see, there's a very critical error inside this book, which has resulted in the bad review. It's clearly not fifths here that are being marked. If it's in 8 parts, then it obviously can't be fifths, which is probably the error of someone that has been doing this manually. Now, if you're going to get into these niches, the importance of using software, obviously you don't need it. You can create all this shit in design tools. But I promise you, at some point, if you're doing this type of book manually, you will make a mistake. Now, if the software has been created correctly, like the one that we're going to be using, then there is literally no chance that we're going to make an error like this, okay? So second to that, we need to take a look at why this person thinks this book should be longer, given that it has over 100 pages. That's a little bit suspicious. And also day 12 was not divided and no answers to circle. Day 12 answer sheet is divided but no answers. So again, it looks like the interior creation has just gone wrong here from whatever way they've been producing these books. Now, we need to make sure that we act upon this. We act upon what the customers aren't happy with, and we create, we address those mistakes, and we work our book around them. And also, it was a little bit strange that we had a book that is 105 pages long, but the customer is complaining that the book isn't long enough, which makes me think that what they've probably done here is that they have around 50 pages, and then they've gone and shoved another 50 pages that is dedicated to the answers only, which again, poor customer experience, because if you're looking to buy a 100-page book, you would want most of those pages to be full of the equations, right? So like I say, what it looks like they've done is they've created 105 pages, and it looks like half of them are probably going to be dedicated to solutions, which makes no sense. Now, again, this looks like this is the result of manual work. What you would be doing if you're using software, if you're using the correct software, what that's going to allow you to do is to actually reduce the amount of pages that are being used for the solutions down from around 50 to about 5 pages instead. So you can have a ton of pages that are dedicated to the bulk of the book, which should be, of course, the main content, which is going to be the exercises, and then just a small portion at the back of the book, which is going to be the solution. So we don't want 50 pages of solution, because it is going to be a complete waste and it's misleading. The customers won't like that. I'm going to show you how we're going to do that in the content creation section of this video. Okay, so here's what we're going to do now. We're going to take our competitors' table of contents, because they've obviously done something correct here. We're going to take a look at their table of contents, and we're going to pair this with what we can do inside the app, and we're going to pair this with Common Core standards as well. And then we're going to create our own table of contents from there. So it's super important, if you're doing this type of book, is that you create a logical table of content first, and then you start producing the content. So here's what you also want to do when you're entering into this niche, is that you want to do your research on the Common Core standards. Now, this is something from my understanding that you don't have to have set in stone, because it can get a little bit confusing with the overlaps in between grades. So what we're going to be looking at for the book that we're creating here, after doing our research on Amazon, our competitors' books on the Common Core, is that our grade is going to be targeted between grades 1 and 2. Like I say, some of the Common Core standards and the terminology, even though for quite simplistic concepts, is a little bit confusing to get your head around. So that's why we're offering the bonus that we are offering, is to help clear a lot of these things up and make this process of creating these logical early education books very simple for you. And one thing to note here is that if you want to take a look at the app in a little bit more detail before it goes live, there's actually a webinar that you can visit from the link in the description below with the creator himself, Mr. Naranjan Pradhan. So depending on when you watch this video, you'll either be watching the webinar for that with him, the recorded webinar with him, or you're going to be able to actually buy the product on the sales page. So depending on when you watch this, that sales page will be different. But I highly recommend after this video, you click on that link in the description and you watch the webinar, or you sign up to the wish list, or whatever it is they have on there. So if you've ever been interested in getting into this niche, which a lot of people are because the opportunities are pretty vast, but you're holding back because you don't know how to target the age group correctly, or which type of equations to use on which pages, or how many to use. All these things in such a sensitive niche is a big deal. Now, it is one of the reasons that I have struggled to create the books that I want to create in this niche, because it is quite hard to know how to target the audience correctly. Now, on the 25th of March, when this software here gets released, I'm going to be offering a bonus that is going to resolve that issue for a ton of people, which is going to allow us to create more books, to target the audience correctly, and therefore make more sales. So the creator of this app, you probably know the guy by now, Mr. Naranjan Pradhan, has been in the early education industry for 15, 16, 17 years or something ridiculous. He knows what he's talking about. He creates these apps with his team. So like I say, I've twisted the guy's arm to make sure that he's going to join me on the live workshop that I am creating for the bonus here. So the live workshop, we're going to talk about that at the end of this video, but it is going to be absolutely killer. And the bonus of introducing him into that as well is going to solve a lot of problems and help a lot of people. I can absolutely guarantee that. We'll talk about that more at the end of the video, but that's what's happening. So from here, we need to create our own table of contents using our competitors' table of contents, and of course the information from Common Core, and of course from the different types of options that we have on the app itself. Okay, so I've already gone ahead and done this, and we're going to have 6 different sections here with around 10 to 15 pages per section. The amount of pages you have per section doesn't have to be exact, but we're just going to work with this framework here. And this is super important for any book that you make, is that you have this table of contents and then you start working through that. And one of the good things about this app in particular is that it is actually laid out in a way where we can follow this, so that it makes a natural progression of difficulty for the child as well. So I will go over that more in the review for the product on the 25th of March. But for now, we just want to make sure that we can create this content logically. So obviously I'm not going to create the entire book here, but what we want to make sure that we're doing when we are creating the content here is that we are taking the customer's objections into consideration when we create the content, and we also make use of the software's features. If you buy software and the software has features that speeds up your content creation time, you need to make sure that you're using them. Okay, so what we'll do very quickly is just introduce a few pages here just to show you what we're getting at. So we want to make sure there's the logical progression. So we're going to go through the table of contents that we've created ourselves from our competitors' books and the Common Core, and then we're going to logically start laying things out. So just to touch upon a few things that you want to do with any type of software that you have is to make sure that if you are having, let's say, the first section here, the introduction sections to fractions, let's say that you're having around 10 pages for this section here. I think we're going to have slightly more in our book. You want to make sure that when you're introducing these pages into the app, that you are utilizing the clone page and the bulk clone pages as well. So there's no point in starting over with every single page that you create. If you have the option to bulk clone these, make sure that you do that. You can go ahead, clone the pages. It's going to give you a different page within the same type of equation 10 more times. Okay, and if you don't have that option for whatever version that you have, you can use the clone page option here and just keep selecting. Again, it's saving you a ton of time when it comes to this type of content creation. And of course, this will be 100% the way the software is made. It will be 100% accurate. You will not get mistakes in the software. So that's one of the first issues that we're already addressing by not doing this manually, is that we're going to reduce the errors that occur from manual creation of these type of pages. So automatically what we're doing is going to be pleasing the customer. We've addressed that point here when there was mistakes in the book, that review, mistakes in the book, we don't have to worry about that. So the second complaint that we identified here was that the person was creating a book that had 100 pages in it, and half of those pages were being dedicated to the solutions. Now, again, that to me sounds like that might be a manual creation issue. What we're going to be using apps for is to use the show solutions option here, but it's going to generate the solutions to the back of the book automatically, and it's going to consolidate them into around 5 pages. So as you can see here, if we go ahead and just go back to our page that we're working on here, what it's going to do, instead of taking up tons of pages, it's going to just consolidate them into a small area here. Okay, there's no need to take up tons of room, because if you take up tons of room, you add more pages to your book. And when you add more pages to your book, unnecessarily so, you have to increase the price of your book. Now, if you remember the book that I created, the addition and subtraction book. So what happened here with my book was, because I created so many pages, is that when Amazon increased their prices a few months ago, I had to increase my price to cater to that, to up to $9.77, which meant that the book was priced too high and it got sort of bumped out of the market here, because people were just buying other books that had sort of similar equations inside them for a cheaper price. So what you need to be doing is always taking this into consideration, like what money you're actually going to be making versus the amount of pages that you have to create. So always think about the amount of pages that you have inside the book. It is going to have a direct impact on the profit that you make per book as well. And putting tons and tons of pages dedicated to solutions makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So what you're going to be doing as you go through your table of contents, and we're going to move on to the next section here, because I'm aware that not everyone will have software like this. What we're going to be doing as we finish these pages, we're just going to be blocking them off. So green means they've not been done, red means that we have completed them. Okay, very simple stuff. We're going to move on to the next section here, which is going to be dividing shapes into equal parts. And we're going to do the same thing again, where we're going to select the appropriate section. We're going to introduce the pages here. We're going to bulk clone them or clone them. Just get on with it. Don't waste time. Get these pages in here. You can go back and edit them if you want to. You can go back and edit all the parts here if you need to, but we're just getting this done. We can always go back and edit these things afterwards. Okay, so we're going to introduce a new page here, introduce the next section here, which is going to be this one here, and we just keep doing it. And this is the point, right? If you have software, you want to make the most of its features, you want to get on with it, create the content, and that's going to allow you to create the content quicker, which allows you to, of course, publish more books. So I would recommend, and we will get into this in the bonus here as to the reasoning behind doing things like this, but I'd recommend that when you're creating these books is that you do have a natural variety inside them. So we're going to be reducing the amount of rows and columns for certain reasons on certain pages, just to make sure that there is that level of variety. And what we can do, if to make sure, we want to keep the child engaged is one of the main things. So what we'll be doing with the different sections is taking different sections, and we're going to be adding them onto these kind of like variety pages, we can call them here. Okay, just so we don't deliver a boring product to our customer. Okay, so again, doing things like this is going to help our book stand out. It's going to help us please the customer. If the customer's child is more engaged, then there's going to be a higher chance of us getting that 5-star review. Okay, and here's a quick tip here. Now, anything in any type of these early education books where the child has to shade or color or do something with pens or a pencil is going to increase their enjoyment of that book massively. Again, big smile on the child's face, big smile on the parent's face, big 5-star reviews for you. So what we have already is a book in a niche that has traffic going to it. We're creating this book faster, which of course is going to allow us to create more of these books. We've addressed customer concerns already just through virtue of using software. And like I say, we're creating this at a pace in which would be not literally impossible, but extremely hard to do manually. So that's step number 2, which we're calling sharpening the axe. So we're gathering that audience information, gathering information from our competitors' books, working with them inside of applications where it makes sense to do so. And of course, if you're not in these type of niches where you are using software, it is of course super important that you are checking out the reviews of other people's books, doing all those things, getting insights into your audience, and then catering to that when you create the content for your book. So regarding content creations is a super awesome section here. I'm just going to quickly go back into the app and show you the final result of what we've created from the Fraction Worksheet Generator, which took around about 30 minutes to create this content. Then we're going to go take a look at something that's more general that you can apply to any type of book, where it's going to help us to create our book cover using the click-through rate information of other books that we've created. Okay, so super awesome stuff. So we're going to move back into the app here and just take a look at the final version of what we're going to go for our book interior. So obviously changes have been made and changes will continue to be made just to make sure that this is a product that we can sell to our our customers. Okay, so just to go through this here, what we were doing was making sure that we had a decent amount of variety inside the book. Now, of course, we were using the Common Core, we were using the table of contents that we created, we were using the table of contents from a competitor's book as well. And what we're doing is making sure that we have enough pages to give the child practice. We had enough pages that introduce some variety into this as well. And of course, we had this natural progression as we're going through this as well. So again, this is going to be one of the reasons why the bonus that I'm offering with this is going to be such a valuable resource for you, is because you're going to get an idea as to the type of pages that you can introduce and the reasons why that you're going to introduce those pages that are going to help increase the child's engagement, which is going to, of course, help the chance of making sales and getting 5-star reviews and ultimately getting your product to stick in the marketplace for much longer. Because if you get things wrong in this sensitive niche, what's going to happen is people are going to give you those negative reviews. Then, of course, your sales are going to start dying off. Okay, so we've got this logical progression going through the book. I need to make a few changes here to make sure, as you can see, one of the settings, again, important setting that we use in these apps, make sure that we see the parameters that we can work with. You can put that, you can switch that on and off. And as you can see, I need to make a few adjustments here for a few of these pages just to make sure that we are within those lines. Again, this is all about a natural progression. We're making sure that there's going to be some pen work for the child as well with these sections. Then we get introduced a different type of variety in terms of the layout. Of course, with these apps, you have lots and lots of different layouts that you can work with. Variety, super important for these niches. Got to keep the child engaged and happy. And if you're ever in doubt regarding errors inside the software, you can always come into this section, the settings section, and toggle on and off these solutions, just so that you're absolutely 100% happy with what you're getting here. Obviously, you would not leave them on. And this is another important factor when it comes to the content creation, is that even though the apps can create the pages very fast, you do want to go through them. And if you can add any kind of, I touched upon this years ago in one of my videos, is that if you can add any sort of flair, any kind of flair whatsoever into your books, then you should do so. So, for example, if you do want to make your book slightly more engaging, what you can do is to introduce an arrow, any kind of doodle, any kind of illustration. You might have something that you've been working on before. If you remember my previous videos where I talk about the importance of keeping a hold of any work that you've had outsourced for you. So if you do have cute images, little doodles like this, then you can reuse them in these type of projects as well. I'm going to go ahead, you can insert them into the software here, you can drag and drop them around. Again, just do what you want to make the book a little bit more engaging. And again, it just adds that little extra something that's going to push people that little bit more toward leaving that 5-star review. So just scrolling through here, everything that we've got so far, and we're pretty much done. We've got over 100 pages for our book that we can use. Now, the next step for content creation is that we have to decide what type of book cover we're going to use for this. So let's go over this quickly now to what we're going to be doing to help us establish what type of book cover that we're going to use, not only for the first book that we make in the series, but across the entirety of the series as well. So if you have information from other books that you've created in these niches, what you can do is to use your advertising data. And at this point, most of us have some form of advertising data that we can work with, is that we can take a look at the click-through rate and work with that for our next book. So for example, if we come to add metric here and we go to our click-through rate, which is shortened to CTR, which is basically the amount of people who see your book and then go through and click it. So 2.16 is a good click-through rate. Now, anything that's below sort of 0.4% click-through rate is going to be not particularly good. So what we have here is the click-through rate for a campaign for this book here. Okay, so it's not a particularly good book cover. We spoke about this in the previous video about ugly book covers that are cheap to make and fast to make. So it's not a particularly good book cover, but the click-through rate is good. Now, we have a book in the same niche here. It's a kindergarten workbook, and the click-through rate, as we can see here, if I just quickly get this up onto screen, 0.33% here, which is on the very low end of what I'd like to see, which means, kind of theoretically, but kind of not at the same time, is that the design for this book cover is going to be more effective than the design for this book cover here. So we're going to take this information for this book cover and we're going to start creating our book cover for our fraction book based around this information. So what we can do, I've already started working on other books in this niche, and this is kind of a sneak preview here. You know what? This is shit, but I think it would work. This was actually like a test template. As you can see, it's kind of similar. It's not a direct copy. This was made on Fiverr. Again, for these niches, Fiverr is fine. If you're doing things like coloring books, you would probably want to hire an illustrator from Upwork. Fiverr, this was $20 to $25. Now, we took that. I took the color combinations, and I introduced them into these books as well. So this is for a different niche. And what I do when I'm creating the book covers is I just create tons and tons and tons of different types of versions of the book cover until I'm happy with what I get. So, and as you can see, it's slightly overkill with the amount of book covers that I create. But basically, what you're doing here, and everything that we talk about in this video, in this whole series of like easier to create books, is that you have to be able to create them quicker. Okay. So, for example, what we're going to do is duplicate this page here, and we're going to use the template for this book to start creating our new books that we've just created inside the app. Okay. So everything I'm trying to emphasize here is about the time that it takes to create these books, because you don't want to create one of these books, spend 4 million years or $500 on the book cover, spend $500 on ads, and then release the book and then it not make the sales that you want it to make, that you have to have it to make your money back. Okay, so we'll talk about the ads in just a second and how that's going to work. But this is what you would do. You would start using the template, working with it. I don't actually know what I'm going to be having in this section here. The grades are going to be off because I'm not clued up with the grades just yet. We're just going to start working with this template. Now, what you can do is take one of the interior pages, you can download it and then use it for the book cover here. So you would take that download it from software, put it onto the front cover. This is pretty standard within the niche that you show off some of the pages somewhere, and of course you just keep editing until you're happy with what you've got. Okay, obviously you don't want to make it exactly the same as your other books, but if you take a look at any of the big players in this niche in particular, you'll see that even across the bigger publishers, like they are literally doing the same thing here, because it doesn't make sense. If you have a formula that works, it doesn't make sense to change it, right? And this is with the humble math guys, like they don't change their formula. They have the same template, the same color scheme, which has been proven to work. And I can guarantee they didn't start their early education business with this exact design. They probably made some informed decisions as to what was working best, like split testing basically, and then just ran with it for every other book that you can see here, right? So that's pretty awesome. So that's how we're going to be creating the book cover. Either do it yourself. If you're using Canva, you really want to avoid any of their pro or free elements. Don't use them. Use everything your own images. Make sure that you do that. If you're doing it in Canva, if you're doing it in Fiverr, check people's reviews. You don't want to get ripped off, just to make sure that you have. It's easy on Fiverr. You just sort it by the best sellers and you should be good to go. But for me, I think I'd probably like to work on this myself in Canva, since I do have this proven structure, and my graphic design skills are terrible, really, but they're not like so bad that I don't think I can do this myself. So again, if we're doing it ourselves, you can reduce the production costs, which again, super important. So what we're going to have here, and again, the importance of speed and time when it comes to these type of niches, or a lot of niches that you guys are getting into, is that we created this interior. It took like an hour. It took maybe half an hour of research. We've done that. We've got information that we can use to create our book covers. If we didn't have that information, we could still create this. We could still outsource this for $20. We could still create this within a few hours. Okay, so within half a day to a day, we can have a full product completed. Now, I am not an advocate of just banging out books onto Amazon, but if you can do so, or it makes sense to do so, then you absolutely should. So here's going to be the launch plan for this book. Now, we can get into a ton of detail when it comes to the finer things, and this is why inside people's courses that they're just packed out with tons and tons of different sections for every area of publishing. But when you strip it back, we'll take a look at the things that really matter and that will give you results here, and it has to all make sense, from everything from our niche research to our launch plan. It's going to be working together. So we're just going to do this. Step 1, we're going to release our book. Okay, we're going to release our book onto Amazon. Step 2, we're going to run automatic campaigns. We're going to start them at 75 cents. It's very easy to do. We're not going to worry about creating manual campaigns. We're not going to worry about training Amazon to find out what our book target audience is. We're going to run our automatic ads. Now, recently what I found is that I've had to let the auto ads run for slightly longer. So some of them have gone 30 and 0 without getting any sales, and then they've picked up all of a sudden in the next sort of day or two. So we're going to take that into consideration. but it's unlikely for this type of book that we're going to be getting anywhere near 30 clicks per day. I'll explain why. Step 3 is we're going to budget for the niche. Okay, so we looked, and again, this has to go back, it has to all work together. We looked at the niche research and we said to ourselves, we're probably going to be we have a high chance of making sales in this niche, but also per book, if we create one book, it's not going to make us a shit ton of money, right? So we have to create more books in this niche. It makes sense to do so. So we have to budget for every book that we put out there. So what I'm going to be doing, based upon the niche potential per book, instead of doing like $250 per book, I'm going to go for around $50 to $75 per book for the first month of the book being launched. Okay, so what we're going to do, as you can see on screen here, is that we've taken that $75 and we're going to divide that into your typical amount of days in a month, which is 30. So that's going to give us $2.50, which means that we will put our budget for this book at around $2 to $3 per day. Okay, so this is how I keep track. This is how I keep within my budget so that I don't let ads piss me off. Now, we're going to run into this scenario where it might take longer to get clicks. We're going to run into this scenario where we're not going to make sales with every single book. But as we produce more books, we will increase our chances of making these sales, okay? And then from there, step number 4, we're going to monitor the clicks every single day. And if we start getting over 10 clicks per day, we're going to reduce the cost per click. So let's say that our cost per click is 75 cents and we had 12 clicks on one day. We're going to reduce the cost per click by around 5 cents every single day that happens. So we're going to reduce that to 70 cents. Then we're going to monitor the next day. How many clicks are we getting? If it's over 10, we're going to reduce that by another 5. Okay. So there are scenarios where I've blown through my budget really quickly and I've severely reduced the cost per click. But in general, this is kind of how I do things. And as I touched upon before, I am not going to do anything to get any type of review for this book. Again, I truly don't believe that is a necessity. I'm not saying it wouldn't make a difference. I'm just saying we don't need to get sales. And honestly, I promise you, while there is a million fancy different ways of doing launches and doing advertising campaigns, obviously I've made manual campaigns out of my auto campaigns. Obviously, I've gone into finer details with how I budget and things like that. But the meat of this launch is this in front of you for every single book. This is the framework that you can work with, and it works well. Will it work well for a shit book? The answer is no. Will some fancy strategy for a shit book work well? No, it won't. None of this works for bad books, okay? And step number 5, as per usual, we're going to just monitor the rankings for our books. So when you're setting up your book title and your subtitle and your description and your backing keywords, you want to be using all those relevant keywords, all those keywords where you've done your keyword research. Want to use all of them and just keep monitoring where you're getting ranked for those different keywords. So typically what I would do, go onto Amazon. If you're creating a fraction workbook and you want to get ranked for the term fraction workbook, use the term fraction workbook in the title of your book. It is important to use it in the title. It's the most potent place to use keywords. From there, when you're creating the subtitle for your book, just use other relevant keywords in your niche. I won't do that in this because people copy the books. That's what they do. They copy the books exactly. But that's the way that you can do it. I've got other videos that go into more detail about that. Create your title like that, create your subtitle like that, create your description and use keywords throughout that naturally. I don't know how important it is, but just do that. And again, same with the back-end keywords. Go watch some of my other videos. You'll find out how I do that. And then as you start getting sales from your advertising campaigns, you're going to just keep checking to see where your book is being ranked for all of those different keywords and all of those variations of those keywords as well. See where you're being ranked on Amazon. And what's going to happen here is that if the book gets ranked on the first page for a certain keyword and then it dies off the front page, and after I've gone through my budget, am I going to panic and spend a shit ton of money on ads just to get the book back up there? No. I'm going to create more books. I'm going to use that money that I would have wasted on ads to create more books, okay? And this is something is super important. What people do is they get emotionally attached to their BSR because your BSR is being lowered through your ads. You will make sales to shit books from ads, which will lower your BSR, which makes you feel good, which makes you get attached to that book. You can't do that forever. Yes, you should probably run your ads for between a period of 1 and 3 months to get the organic rankings, but you just can't keep spending on these type of niches, right? It doesn't make sense to do so. And at some point, you're going to bite bite the bullet and you're going to move on to the next project. And if you're new to KDP, if you're not having success with KDP, when you do things this way with this budget in mind and the way that you monitor your rankings and you monitor the success rate of your book using different metrics in your advertising campaign, doing things this way will help you remove the emotional attachment you have, move on to the next project. And when you move from project to project to project, as in from book to book to book, you're going to get better with every book that you create. And not only will you get better, here's something nobody wants to tell you, you're also going to get luckier as well, which is a factor, whether you want to admit it or not. Luck is a factor when it comes to having success with KDP. All right, so that's pretty much everything for this video. I hope you've enjoyed this case study. So as promised, I'll talk very briefly about the Fraction Worksheet Generator, which comes out on March the 25th, which I've been using in this video here. There's a launch period where the price goes from whatever to whatever after that launch period. 25th of March, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Launch period ends March the 28th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. So on the 25th, if you're still watching this video, I will do the full review for that. So we're not going to talk any bullshit. We're not going to hype the niche up. We're going to just give factual information about the pricing, what the tool does, demonstrate things as you've seen here. We'll go into a little bit more detail regarding the bonuses on those days as well in the next two videos. So like I say, the live workshop that I've set up is going to be an absolutely incredible bonus that I'm offering with this app. If you decide to pick this up through me during that launch period only, it's going to be so good because we're going to have the app creator on here as well, Mr. Naranjan Pradham. It's likely that I'm not going to offer it after the launch period. If I do, it will be paid because I am very confident that this information across my many years of KDP and his many years of early education is going to be incredible value that is going to change a lot of people's publishing journeys going forward. I'm super excited to do that. We're going to talk more about that, how that's going to be structured, how long it's going to be, whether it's going to be recorded or not, all those things. We're going to talk about that in the next video. I'm open to suggestions with that bonus as well. If you have suggestions that you want to see, put them out there and I'll take them into consideration. So yeah, that's my live workshop. I'm going to talk about when I'm going to be hosting that. We'll get into that in more details later on. It will probably be at least a week after the launch so that you have some time to start playing around with the app. Give us some time for me to just set things up and finalize a few things and maybe add some more bonuses as well. So yeah, the review for that and more information is going to be happening in the upcoming days. So make sure that you stay tuned if you're even remotely interested in any of this. That's it for this video. It's been a long one. Thank you for watching. Hope it helps you. And I'll see you in the next videos very soon.